Hi guys, and welcome to this special conversation with Toby Mahoney from Urban Money all the way in Tasmania. We're going to talk about a subject which is, I suppose, we hear it around in the industry many times, but we don't really understand the actual consequences of it. When Rhiannon told me about the event, I said, and what could I do to help? Because, we've got a fairly large community about it. And it's not often that it was a broker-led event as well. So there was no other organizations behind it. So I could do that's what I could do. I can't do anything else, but I can promote it, right? So I met you there, and I heard your story. I didn't realize you were talking about it. I should have. But I was one of those people that I know this is an event. I need to be there, and I went there. I didn't know who the speakers were. I never looked up, who the speakers were or what the rationale behind it was. And your story really tugged at my heart. My wife was actually crying, and it's one of the few events I actually took my wife along. So I love for you to be able to, I suppose, tell the wider finance and coffee community about your story, whereas before we're just in a little room in Hobart with, I think like 60 or 80 brokers there. So if we can actually, have our audience listen to what you've got to say, hopefully that also helps at least one more person out there. Toby, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Dion, for having me. In the great intro. It's really hard to, I guess, start having those conversations around mental health and really, I think it's really important that we start actually spending more and more time on it and really talking about it. And since my breakdown in July in 2022, and certainly over the last few months, I've become really passionate about mental health in the finance industry, and really getting to know what, how my brain ticks, and in turn, if that helps one person out there by me sharing my story, that certainly helps as well. And like, I'm doing my job if that helps, and it's really touching to hear the impacts that my conversations are having. As you said, your wife crying, and I've had some great feedback from the conversations. But from my point of view, it's really not about it's not about the recognition of the talks and all that. It's really about making sure that the message gets out there for people that are suffering in silence, like I was, not really knowing where to go for help. I'll go into a bit of detail around what happened to the build up of it, the support that I grabbed around it, had around me during my my recovery period and my ongoing recovery as well. So
can I just jump in there, mate?
Yep.
And could I just say that, because I was trying to flick him, because I was going to ask you a question. Say this. I have to say I'm in awe of you, because we talk about the mental health, but not many people. Actually, I don't actually know one person that has actually admitted that they had a breakdown, if that makes sense. So just saying that you went through this, it wasn't just you had a little depression, it was actually a bigger thing, right, which you're going to go into. I just want to say thank you for sharing that. Okay.
So let's start at the day that it happened, I guess, or prior to, I guess, as well. I started Urban Money here in Tassie April 2015, and we had a 1-year-old at the time. So and when I first started, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go, and so I was working a second job to keep the business going to start with. So I was working 40 hours within employment, and then spending all the spare time outside of that, trying to build Urban Money up. So that sort of went on for the first couple of years of the business, just really trying to cement myself in and make sure that my family, myself, was really comfortable in stepping out into the business full time. I guess that probably really formed the next 5 years after that to what, the time that I spent in the business. And as everyone does, they get really focused on their business and making sure that business grows and any staff around you are looked after. And, if there's anything that we can do to help them, our customers come first all the time. And we strive for perfection within our business and personally as well. We're always looking at that, trying to go, what can we do better next time? Why did this happen? And for me, I was really, certainly in the later stages before my breakdown, I was really negative towards myself around, whenever a small mistake would happen, I would be, the negative self-talk is, you're stupid, you're silly. Why did you do that? Such a stupid mistake, those sort of things. And we've been quite lucky. We've got a really great crew of staff in the office, and I just kept working myself to the bone. I was there from you're there from 8 to 8, and worrying about emails and the phone calls and text messages and all that sort of come in at all hours. I recall probably about year 3 or 4, I was in between Christmas and New Year. I was trying to have a holiday with my family in Melbourne and walking around the Melbourne Zoo, taking an application on a napkin over the phone for a car loan. So it was just, you're always sort of going, I want to make sure that I get every deal possible, and not really setting the boundaries there for your customers and for for yourself and for your family and all that as well. So and then come July 12th, I think the date was from memory. It's a pretty vivid day in terms of dates, not clearly, but the actual day itself is. I remember we come home from a weekend away camping. I started unpacking the caravan, and again, as it does, the phone's ringing. The kids are trying to help unpack and get in the way and all that. And we had a special weekend away. I was actually able to switch off and really focus in on the kids and enjoy at least the weekend, where I've actually very rarely had the chance to be able to do that. And as the phone kept ringing, I went into I started talking to my wife Jacqueline and then broke down. I literally curled up in a ball in the caravan and was crying uncontrollably. Couldn't move for a while in the caravan. Couldn't talk because I was having panic attacks whilst I was having the breakdown and crying. And I eventually made my way up into inside and into the shower, and then I literally just collapsed on the shower floor. Like, I ended up leaning up against the shower wall and sat in the shower for, I don't really know, it was about an hour, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I was in there for quite a while, but I was temporarily paralyzed. I really couldn't lift my arms to actually even turn the shower off. I couldn't get out of the shower. Like, it was quite an unreal sensation to actually go, I can't move. Like, I know that my body's able to, but I can't physically get any energy. I can't get anything to happen to my body that warrants actually doing anything other than sitting here and crying. And it was a rough day. It was quite, obviously we've got some great family and support around me, and my dad received a call at about 11:40 from my wife Jacqueline, letting him know that I had a breakdown and she's not sure what to do. And by about 4:30 that afternoon, he was flying into Launceston to come over and be with me and the family to actually help support us. Certainly in those initial first few days where we just wasn't sure even what the days were sort of going to look like. My mum unfortunately couldn't come over at that time, but she followed over a few weeks later, or a week or so later as well. We had a really close friend of mine that that was that I've been speaking to beforehand, and she had sort of mentioned a few times that she was a bit worried about how I was going. Jacqueline had said to me as well, I think you're struggling, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to say I need help. Well, I didn't know how to say I needed help. I didn't know where to go for it. I just I say I suffered in silence, but everyone else around me sort of knew something was happening, but didn't know how to have that conversation, or they'd start to have it, and I'd get angry and snap at them and sort of move away and hide from it. So so I actually had a friend just before I had the breakdown. She went and actually saw. I'd actually been to the doctor a couple of weeks for my breakdown and just said, "Oh, look, I'm not feeling well." And the doctor's gone, "I will give you a referral to a psychiatrist just to see what's happening. Keep on your medications." And I was probably internally, like, yeah, the meds probably aren't really doing their job. Externally, I was just like, yeah, that would do. I've got something from the doctor. A couple of days after I had the breakdown, I went to that same doctor, and they was like, "No, just keep doing what you're doing. Stay on the meds that you're on." As I said, my friend that had gone actually seen a doctor a few weeks before my breakdown, a new doctor, my new doctor now. She'd been there, went on her own accord to actually talk to him about my situation to make sure that he'd be willing to take me on, because he had some expertise in the mental health area. And luckily, he'd come back to him and said, "Yeah, more than happy to see me." And I got in about 4 days after my breakdown, and it was just amazing to actually talk to someone, not just someone to go, here's a solution to your problem. I'm gonna problem solve this for you and fix it, because that's our natural instinct to actually really go, there's a problem, let's jump in and fix it. But they sat there and listened. My wife was on the phone because she couldn't make the actual appointment, but she was on the phone talking to him as well. Whilst I hadn't had any thoughts of self-harm, I'd had thoughts about my worthiness to actually be, on this planet. Well, am I worthy enough am I good enough to be here? Am I good enough to be here to support Jacqueline and my two beautiful boys? And that was part of the conversation with this doctor, and we straight away he's sort of, right, well, we need to get you off your medication, start to wean you off your medication, and we need to get you in, at least into the psychiatrist as soon as possible, and then to and potentially new medications and what have you as well. So then from there we went to we started reducing my medications from day one of seeing Dr. Tip here in Launceston, and that same day that I'd been there, he'd actually at 4:30 that afternoon he rang me to make sure that I was going okay, which I was quite surprised by, because I'm not sure there's a doctor out there. A lot of doctors don't have the time to even to ring a patient to see if they're doing okay at the end of the day. And that was quite a humbling feeling to know that the doctor actually was able to take 2 minutes out of his afternoon to check on me and make sure that I was okay. I got another phone call the next morning from him as well to say that I've reached out to the psychiatrist. They're going to look at getting you in a lot sooner. Let's see what we can do. They should call you later today. And then I got a phone call about 3:30 from the psychiatrist office, and they booked me in within a few days to actually get a cancellation that they overslept me in. And then about half hour after I hung up the phone, the doctor actually called me again. So within a space of, I guess, nearly 40, not even 48 hours, I'd had 3 phone calls from the doctor after my appointment to make sure I'm still traveling okay, and that I was getting the support from, the things that were happening were meant to happen. The psychiatrist calling me in that as well. So, so it was a pretty intensive sort of week. with appointments, trying to get all of that underway. I met my psychiatrist, and within minutes, he did, without really even talking to him, he just, my posture and I guess the way that I was actually holding or not holding eye contact and everything like that. I had the diagnosis of ADHD, severe depression, and severe anxiety. So my, so pretty much, like I was, on struggle street, and just a lot of it made sense, I guess, once the ADHD and I started to actually understand what ADHD was. A lot of the stuff made sense, not just from the last few years where I had been really struggling, but probably looking back at my childhood as well, and going forward from that. You start getting, I guess, hyper focused on things with ADHD. You start, gaming more, or finding things that you actually really love, but getting hyper focused on it, and you don't want to be distracted from it, and you just got to get in and get it done at all costs. So I guess from that day, from my breakdown, and moving forward, the support around me has been fantastic. My staff have been great. My wife was spectacular. My staff actually stepped up, or my manager stepped up, and between him and my wife, they stopped talking to me about the business. There's only a few questions here and there that they would ask, but stopped talking to me about the business for about 3 months. And going from, I guess, being identified, it was Toby from Urban Money, Urban Money Toby. It was always my link. It was my identity. Going from having, living and breathing that, to not knowing about what was going on in the business was challenging. And on top of the diagnosis and everything like that, you take away that one thing that I guess you've lived and breathed for 7 years, which is not necessarily the best thing. With my boys, I should be living and breathing my boys, and my family. But the business came first, and I needed to make sure that I looked after that they were looked after no matter what. And whilst I've grown a successful business, and to a point where I could take a step back, I didn't know how to. Again, same with the mental health side of it. So I didn't know how to ask for it. I didn't know what to do, and just couldn't find the external support that I really, probably needed to be able to make those, to have those conversations. So, so that 3 months was, as I said, it was quite scary in a way, but it was exactly what I needed. The business ran spectacularly while I was away. Probably ran better than when I was actually in the business. So, so the appreciation for everyone that's been, that's in our business. We can't, we continue to thank them all the time. We can't thank them enough for what they did, certainly in those first few tough months where Jacqueline was very rarely in the business as well. She was, I ended up having 3 weeks in hospital with change of medications, and because it was the first week that I sort of had in hospital, that I was on some pretty strong medications where I can very rarely, or I can't really recall a lot of my time there for that first week, and then the next couple of weeks, I began to feel a bit different. They provided structure for me. You knew that you was getting lunch at 12. You knew that dinner was going to be there at 5, and that you knew that you could nearly get a Dixie cup every night for dessert. So that was, that was always nice to have a little bit of that as well. But I tried to, surprising how many people in there that were telling the same story, but we're only doing it behind closed doors. We're not actually having that conversation. I wasn't having the conversations out in public, and We know that probably if we had talked about it before we had the breakdowns or got to that point of needing to go into hospital, that we may not have been there, or it might, or it might not have been as severe as what they were. But I was certainly in the right place for that at that time. It was my wife deserves a medal to be spending that, to be running between the kids, running between me at the hospital and the business. Like she really, really, I just can't explain how, grateful I am to actually have her in my life and be, it's been such a rock through all of this. And I think, the hard thing that gets that gets not really talked about, I guess, afterwards as well, is the actual support, like what the hard work and the impact that it actually has on everyone else around you as well. Mental health can be a little bit of a selfish thing because you're working on yourself and making sure that you're doing all the right things, but the pressure and everything that was put back onto her, and and my mum and dad when they were over here, and my in-laws and my kids, like it was when I look back on it now, it's pretty rough for me. They're 9 and 6 now. So 5 and 8-year-olds seeing their dad curled up in a ball, not being able to move, wanting to know what's wrong. But I couldn't give them any words to let them know that I'll be okay, or anything like that. Like it was just such a on reflection, it's just I wouldn't wish any kid to go through any of that. Like it's not. It's very challenging. I think but I think they're coming out of it. Light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm feeling pretty good now, but they've seen that I'm doing things. I've been through 20 weeks of going to day therapy 1 day a week for a full day. Talking and learning about the challenges and stuff that I had. Learning about what ADHD is, what depression is, what the anxiety is. Learning to name what I'm feeling. Whereas before I just brush it off. Like once you name it, you can actually start to deal with it. So I think that's an important thing, to be able to do, and actually start to actually understand your body as well. But I was out of work I wasn't at work for probably 5 months. So from July 12, I went back under advisement from psychiatrists in November, I think it was, but only 4 hours, 2 days a week. So the journey of beginning to create a new identity had begun, I guess. It's really about trying to work out who I was, where I fitted back in our business, and where I fitted back in life, and what my priorities were. That was probably a pretty big, it's been a very big challenge, and I'm still working through that. I'm still Toby at Urban Money, but I'm also now Toby, the basketball coach of 8 under 12 kids. That's pretty challenging in itself. I'm present whenever I'm with my kids now. I'm actually, my phone's put aside. I'm able to have conversations with them and not be distracted by a noise that's going on in the background, and not being able to look them in the eye and all that sort of thing as well. So it's really, I think, I've got the practice makes progress banner up, I guess, on the conversation, because as I said at the start, that really striving for perfection is never, you're never going to get there. There's no such thing. So we've got a few mottos in our house. One is be kind. 2 is practice makes progress. So no matter what you do, if you practice it, and you'll keep moving forward. And that's I think a really important message. Is that it will allow you, or you make a mistake, or you make an error, or it's not a mistake, it's a learning. Changing the way that we actually talk to ourselves, talk to each other. Using don't use shouldn't. You shouldn't feel like that. That was a big thing for me. Why do I feel like this? I shouldn't feel like this. I've got I've got everything in my life that I wanted. I've got beautiful family. I've got a good business. I've got great mates. I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel depressed. I shouldn't have anxiety about opening the front door and walking to my car and driving to work and sitting out the front and having the shakes and nearly in tears. And I shouldn't have any of that. I should be okay. And that just compiles pressure back on ourselves, back on yourself as someone, suffering from mental illness. And part of the ADHD is that negative self-talk. And when you're actually using those words, it just keeps compounding how you're actually feeling. And so we've made quite a few changes in my life since then. I'm as of last week, I've actually gone up to working 4 days, which not 4 full days, but I'm in the office 4 days, which is great. I'm back dealing with customers, and I'm really loving being able to actually assist again. I'd sort of looking back on it, I'd lost the love for the industry, lost the love for writing loans and banging your head up against a brick wall with the banks and all that sort of stuff. So it was really it's been I guess we look at it as it's a breakdown that had to happen. It was going to happen at some point, especially with having undiagnosed ADHD and obviously the severe depression and anxiety. I'm very thankful that it happened when it did. It sounds silly, and it's been an absolutely rough journey on myself, but my wife, my staff, my family, my mum and dad. There was I think my mum probably was hit initially quite hard with it, and probably had some guilt in there because she felt like she should have known, or would have, I would have known if you had ADHD. I would have known that if that's what was going on. But when I was growing up, it was only the naughty kids that had ADHD. I wasn't a naughty kid. I was active. I was sometimes a bit brutal in the way that I probably dealt with things, a bit angry. But yeah, I wasn't naughty, and that was, so no one was really going to pick up on it. And it's not like, in the last 39 years, I won't, it's my birthday in a couple of weeks, but so I'm trying to say I'm 39 for the next, as much as I can for a little bit, but, it's no one knew, not even me, not Jacqueline, my wife I've been with for 15 years. She didn't, she never picked it up. So no one's to blame. And I think that's it's not a blame game. And we shouldn't feel guilty or shouldn't feel shame for feeling the way that we do. We've got to own our emotions. We've got to own our feelings. We're in control of them. Or when you've got a mental illness, you're not in control. But it's knowing that you can actually be there to so that you've got friends or family that you can actually open up to and be vulnerable. And as I said, I'm very lucky that I'm actually here to tell the story, because if I didn't have the breakdown when I did, I honestly don't believe that. I believe that I wouldn't have had a business. I believe that I wouldn't have had a wife, and they would have, she would have left me and taken the kids. And I think in turn, I honestly wouldn't be here. I think it would have driven me to the point, unfortunately, of self-harm. But it's not something that I dwell on and that and go, thank God. I thank God that it happened when it did, so I don't have to worry. So I'm not not focusing on the what could have beens, and and that's a big part of it. Dwelling on those things is not going to keep me on the right track going forward, and that's what we're really focusing on now is where the path is going forward, and certainly being able to share my story and have chats with yourself, Dion, is really important. Like, to be able to share this story and try and make a bit more of bring more of a positive or more comfortable feel around having these tough conversations. I think there's a few learnings that I've got out of it. One is that we're not here to problem solve. So as a mate, someone comes up to me and says that I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to sit there and try and problem solve it for him. If he's or he or she's mentally not feeling well, they need an ear. They don't need to be problem solved. It needs to be just right. Well, let's tell me more. Tell me what's happening. Why do you think you feel that way? Let's delve into it a little bit more. But if you're going to have those conversations, you need to make sure that you're present. You don't want to be worrying about your phone. You don't want to be worrying about what's happening next door or in what's happening in the office, all that sort of stuff. You really need to be making sure that you're present when you have those conversations. I said the changing of wording. So, not, really focusing on the positive side of the words, not using but at the end of a sentence. How many times do we, I'm having a great day, but this has happened. We've just really undone all the good work that we've had. I'm having a great day, full stop, no buts. Buts are a bloody useless thought. So, get rid of the word however. It doesn't come into, I'll try and keep that out of my conversations now. And, and I think just being able to change those words a little bit has made a massive difference in how I've been coping with, and not coping, how I've actually been, because I'm not coping, I actually, I'm striving. So how I've been able to step forward and be able to have these conversations. If I hadn't got the support that I did, and and I formed some great relationships out of my time in hospital, and then the 20 weeks of day therapy afterwards, and the fortnightly counselling sessions, and the monthly psychiatrist sessions, and all this sort of stuff. So I still do a lot of work to keep making sure that I move forward and focus on the positives. And I'm going to have down days. I have those. Things happen. Life happens. I've got the tools now to be able to talk about it. I think some great organisations out there that are actually doing some really great work. I went to a presentation it's called Speak Easy, which is run by Movember. And it was there was 70 odd people in the room, and the interaction that they had, we had to, everyone was telling each other their story around mental illness, or if they haven't had it, that they've known someone that's had it. And the age difference was absolutely, we had 18, 19-year-olds in there to 70-year-olds in there, and there are, you come, certainly around that 70, when you're in that older age group, it's a she'll be right attitude. Mental health was never really discussed around that. Like it was no, you'll be right. Keep moving on. You'll be right. Keep pushing forward. Keep pushing through. Jump into it. But now I think as generations go on, we're really becoming open to it, and we're starting to lean into these conversations, and not jump, because that's just for jumping into it. Where you don't know what's on the other side of it. It's you're leaning in, making sure that you feel comfortable in talking about it and that sort of thing. So 70 strangers in a room talking about mental health, it just warms my heart, and more just makes me realise that whilst we've still got a long way to go with the stigma around mental health and the understanding of it, we're getting there. There's lots of great organisations doing great things to support people going through that process. So I think it's important really to talk about it. So I think I'm not sure there's much more that I can add down at this stage, unless I think that's my story, I guess.
Yeah, mate. Well, thank you for sharing it, because I think when I first heard it, and it's one of those things where I guess when more people talk about it, then you can relate it to yourself and what you've gone through. Right? So for me, just quickly, I mean, I had a thing, and this is probably where a lot of people have it too, where you're earning, your identity is your work, basically what you were doing. Then you got, the stigma is potentially is that, your work, that's your reputation within your own community, whether it's your own ethnic community and so forth as well. And then you're afraid you're going to lose it. And if you lose it, all this embarrassment, and then, what's going to happen to your kids, how your wife can look at you. And then you just take it and you keep going, but then eventually it will break. I was very fortunate as well, because my wife actually turned to me, and I never said it until I kind of had a little moment myself, and I told her the truth. I told her my fears. This is what's going to happen if we do this. We'll lose our investment properties. We'll probably lose our car. All that stuff. And she said to me, "You're going to be no good to us, Dad. All of that is immaterial, and we can do this together." And that's I guess that's that the start of my journey of getting better. Like you said, we're not going to have a day where everything's fine. You're going to have some days which is going to be shit. There's nothing you can do about it. But it's just, the more that it's okay to have these bad days, but to know that there's other places, there's other programs, in different states have different things too, right? So but at the same time, there's national things as well that people can latch onto to actually help you. But the key is that to say, hey, there's something wrong. I need help. I think that's the main thing. And no one, I guess that's the hardest step, is that to acknowledge it and to actually try to seek it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that's said, the identity is your identity. Is that I've been to to my nan's funeral, and because I'm known as Toby at Urban Money, people were asking me about what interest rates are actually happening. What's going on with the interest rates. Asking me about work at my nan, at very close relative, funerals, and
that must have been bizarre.
Because that was my identity, I'd answer it. Like, as silly as it sounds, I felt like I had to answer it, and I felt like I had the responsibility to actually, I've had the responsibility to live and breathe what I do. The power of no now. The most recent funeral that I went to, a lady did come and ask me what was going on in interest rates, and I just said, look, if you'd like to talk about that, here's my card. Please give the call. Please give the office a call and book in an appointment, because I'm here morning. So please leave me alone. And I would never have done that before, but because of the work that I've done on myself and getting to understand how my brain works and that sort of thing, is really has actually has changed my narrative around that identity side of it. But when I do have a bad day, and that's, as you said, you do have bad days, but naming it is important. Naming it and talking about it. So, okay, well, if you're having a shit day, yep, I'm having a shit day. That's exactly what it is. Let's not call it anything else. It is what it is. But what am I going to do now to make the day a bit better? Just that little bit. It's all about 1%ers. It's all about they talk about the 1%ers in footy and all that sort of stuff, but in life too, if you do that 1% consistently each day, over a year, that forms a habit. It forms a system within your life. So it's not something then you actually have to start thinking about too. It just automatically happens for you. So all those little 1%ers, especially when you're having bad days, but in particular, you've really got to do it when you're having good days, is forming those little systems to actually keep improving and keep talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, Toby, thank you so much for your time today. And like I said, I'm in awe in what you do, because every time you talk about your journey, it's not easy. I can tell, right? And it's talking about yourself, talking about your own journey. This is even for most people, because I ask people for their human finance stories as well, right? And to write about themselves is not something you can do just like that. And it can be an emotional roller coaster. But given what you went through as well, it's not easy. So I do thank you very, very much for sharing with me again today, and with the wider finance and coffee community.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invite to actually come and have a chat and be able to share my story. And I think, if anyone does want to reach out and have a chat, or like I'm certainly here, I won't be able to respond to everyone if everyone message me, but if they do have questions and they do want to, I think it's important to talk about it. It's important to just keep talking about it, making sure that the conversations are happening, not just at work but at home too. One thing that I probably found challenging for me was what support was there for business leaders. Like, you're out there maintaining, making sure that your staff are okay, the EAP programs are in place for your staff and everyone else. But where do you go as a business owner to actually have that? So, so there are great organisations out there, like Lifeline, like Sane, like Beyond Blue, the Black Dog Institute. There's so many great organisations out there on a national level, but certainly locally as well, that are there to help. And it is cliche, but it might come out as cliche, but it's actually, it is really okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
But let's name it up. Let's continue. Let's continue that conversation and really talk about it. And I think a challenge that should come out of at least our conversation today is that everyone that's listening actually go out there and have a meaningful conversation with at least one person. And what one thing that have you got to offer? That might just be as I said, you don't need to problem solve it. You don't need to police it. If someone's really not feeling okay, you just need to be there. Most of the time, just an ear is all they need. And if you are asking someone how they're going, give them the time. Don't we get too hung up on "G'day, how you going?" Let's actually, if you're going to ask that question, make sure you got the 5 or 10 minutes that you need to be able to have that chat with someone.
100%. Well, mate, thank you so much, and hopefully we can actually catch up for a real coffee at some point in time this year.
That sounds great, mate. Thank you. Appreciate it.